Hello and
Hi.
welcome to
Welcome. Wisdom for Menopause and Beyond. So we're going to do something a bit different in this episode because we're kind of changing the format a bit. So we're going to really just talk about that. And we're also going to maybe give you a bit more information about what you're going to get from listening to these episodes. And then we're going to talk about the two main things that we're concerned about. And they're kind of separate but interrelated. But so we're going to talk about menopause and midlife is essentially what we're going to do. And sometimes menopause and then midlife happens, or then actually midlife but menopause is related.
And I think they're really important together because people look at them separately. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, about why we think they're both really important, why they're related, and why we shouldn't look at them separately, why it's a holistic sort of approach to the whole of midlife, which is really good. So we're going to start with just going over, for people that are just joining us, about who are
we? Why are we talking about this?
Why are we talking about it?
Anne, you have got, how many years experience?
It's about 25 years. I've been working with women mainly in lots of different spheres. So we started with fertility, with hormones, and actually working on balancing people holistically and all of the emotional things, because we're not just symptoms and mental, so it's the whole holistic thing. And I've covered homeopathy, I cover all sorts of other aspects to it, EFT, hypnotherapy, yoga, acupuncture, all sorts of different approaches.
And you've got a psychology background as well.
Yeah, so we look at the counselling, look at the psychology of what lies behind it. So for about 25 years, I've worked with women in many different aspects of their life and helping them to relaunch their life at many different places. And hormones play such a big part in that. So a lot of work around menopause, a lot of the changes that happens at menopause. And so having written a couple of books about this as well, this is what I look at the clinical side, and I give a lot of information from clients, from patients that I see clinically, what they really ask and how we can really fix them. So that's what I bring. Alison's a slightly different connection to
I've
this.
kind of come the other way round. I mean, we met when I was actually, Anne was my daughter's homeopath actually for a time, and then she was my homeopath, and then we became friends. And actually Anne, I was seeing Anne when I was going through menopause, so that was quite a relevant thing. But my background is much more comes from more of a business not that you don't have a business of head, but mine is kind of like, so I started off by working in public relations, then I taught public relations. I've been an academic for over 25 years, and also been a practitioner, an academic, an author in that field, taught in higher education for 20 years or more, starting with PR, marketing, communications, management, entrepreneurship. Interested in the kind of softer, well, they call them softer skills of management, but actually they're pretty, important things like assertiveness, negotiation, motivation, all those different things. And then I started my own business way back in 2009, where I was a business mentor and coach and trainer, using those elements, how actually businesses could be the best they could be. And then for some reason started to, I suppose it's also relevant to say that in my 40s, I started belly dancing. In my 50s, I started putting on art exhibitions. And in my 60s, I started a PhD, and then decided after 5 years I'd had enough, handed it in as an MPhil, which was looking at the role of mentoring for women entrepreneurs. So I've got all of that kind of experience. If you like, I've come from like maybe the outside world, then became much more interested in the inside world, and how as you become older as a woman, having gone through that transition of menopause myself, realizing that it's a really, really intensely creative space. So we kind of cover that whole process. So it's almost like starting from, having an active hormonal life, coming into menopause, and then going through that transition and getting out the other end. And I always talk about, reclaiming your cronehood and actually getting to that really, really juicy creative part of life. So it's that journey that's we've come from.
We've done, for anybody that has come across us before, we've done over 100 shorter videos, and we pick up lots of small parts, little parts of mentoring, physical things, emotional things, life-changing things, and we've covered that, but we thought we would make these slightly longer episodes to sort of focus on one area more. So this is why we've kind of changed the format, if you like, and we want to be changing the information because we really feel that people are lacking in that information. This is why we kind of changed the format a little bit. Do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's like we kind of fell into this by accident, really.
Yeah.
Because we started this just before lockdown and all that crap hit the fan, and what we kind of were wanting to do there was we were doing very kind of short videos, as say, just one topic per time. And we feel like we've have delivered a lot, and it does come from, you can tell we've had a lot. We've got many years of experience, we've got about 60, 120 years experience between us. But now we're kind of shifting from and people have found that valuable and useful. We've had some good kind of connections from that, and now it's almost like moving to let's actually use a longer form of an episode to basically drill down and give people much more of a kind of firm and much more information. And I suppose it is a bit more teaching in a sense, but we're actually, what we really want to do is not teach people. We want to give people information and enable people to make the right decisions themselves. Take it or leave it. Here's different things. So we might be pointing to a range of different sources so people can go and investigate that for themselves. But actually, by taking one topic per session and giving it a longer form, then we feel that people will get much more information from that and a bit more clues as to what they could do with it.
We've spoken a little bit about in our intro about about us, about what we're doing, about how we're doing slightly longer things. So we thought we'd get to the meat of where we're starting.
So what are you going to get from listening to us talk about this?
So we're going to get a combination of our skills, which we've done. So we're going to talk about menopause and midlife in this part, and they're kind of inseparable. That menopause is part of midlife, and midlife and everything about midlife is not to do with reaching 42 and a half. It's to do with the midlife growth and creativity that menopause allows us. And I think we've got very reductive in we've made women sort of 30 for about 40 years, and then they sort of get old and have to play golf or something, or have cats, play golf and do nothing else. And we've made menopause a series of symptoms that we need to squish down and get rid of,
and to be feared,
and to be massive. I mean, most people really, it's one of those words that you may as well just call them an ugly witch or a crone or something.
I know it's interesting because I spoke to somebody and she was like saying, oh my god, can I get the HRT now? I don't really want to go through any of it. It's almost like people are kind of preempting it by saying
to get rid of it.
We don't want to do that.
We do it with face cream and things like that, but that's kind of fine. That's it doesn't work. But we all know it doesn't work. We're all happy with that. So that's fine. But it's this holistic nature of this movement through the midlife, and menopause is very much part of that, that has really driven us to make these sort of videos. So the 100 or so that we've already got have been sort of small parts of it, of different things, but we thought we'd try and collect them into why. So I think today it's more about
sessions,
why we should celebrate and incorporate and look at these things holistically.
And also come to that, maybe what you're going to find here is a much more positive view of menopause. That menopause is but we always talk about it as one healthy state to another healthy state. So as I said, we're looking at this much more positively and talking about moving from one healthy state to another healthy state. And I think you came to this because a lot of women were coming to you in clinic going through this process and having, a whole variety of experiences, but also feeling a bit negative about themselves.
Very negative. People dread it, absolutely dread it. It's one of those things that's counted as the end of your life, the end of your, this is the end of things. But also, we're going to end it with a load of trouble, a load of symptoms, a load of things that are not worth living through, a load of emotional problems, mental problems, brain fog, memory,
never going to have sex again ever in
never
your
going to have
entire
sex
life.
again in their entire life, which might be a good thing. But it's like,
but it should be your choice, actually.
Choice. But you have this very dread of these between 5 and 12 years. Some people go through, sometimes 20 years. So in clinic, I've seen people come to me with all of these problems and end up feeling so empowered and so happy and so in charge of this change of time.
Yeah.
So I think although menopause is intrinsically linked with mid-cycle, planning and having a good menopause and sort of myth busting.
Yeah, I think that's where we see our role, really.
And it's kind of like, you don't have to suffer one healthy state to another. You don't have to have these. And it's not a case of suppressing your symptoms or not having a menopause. It's about really just embracing it and embracing the person that you're becoming. So when I see people in clinic, they've always come and said, I wish I hadn't suffered for so long. I wish I'd seen this earlier. I wish I'd sorted this. I wish I'd thought about it. So in that spirit of, I wish I'd known earlier, I wish I'd had more options, I wish I'd known about this. One mission is to sort of talk about different aspects of menopause. So the general kind of things we have now is you don't have to suffer. We need to look forward to
information is power. So you need that kind of information. So there isn't just one source you can go to for this. There are many sources, and it's about you as an individual thinking, what do I like? What do I relate to? And we always talk to people and say, if you are not feeling yourself normally, whether it's menopause or not, where's the first place that you go? What makes you feel more of yourself? What makes you feel better? What makes you feel maybe a bit more grounded and able to kind of, cope with life?
And it's also worth experimenting if you're not sure. Or if you normally go to one place, why not try 2 or 3 different places? So it's finding, you're going to come up to a time of change.
Yeah.
So you kind of make a bit of a plan. What am I like with change? Am I somebody that loves it? Or if somebody said, if you're going to let's go to Paris this evening for 2 days, do you sort of sling a couple of pairs of knickers in your bag and go off happy? Or are you, oh my God, I've got to do the washing up and I've got to be up to date with all the washing and I've got to change the shit, what do you like? And all colours in between. So there's that sort of approach to something, and that's worth thinking about.
Yeah, because it is change. So if you're not great with change anyway, then there's other things that you can look at. How can I make change better for me?
And there's lots of things. So people find, and this is we will talk about this in more depth at different times, but people find bush flower remedies very simple, or batch flower remedies, or something very simple, right the way through to wanting to know lots of information about what they might want to come across. Other people just like a surprise and they'll just do it as a surprise. But it's like knowing yourself. So a little bit of planning is most important.
So we talk about that, planning is important. So when you kind of have that average that people talk about menopause, and sometimes they're a bit surprised, my God, they get to 44 or something, and then, but then this is the thing, if you don't really know yourself, you don't really know what's happening to yourself, how do you know when things are changing? So we're kind of saying, have a bit of a benchmark going on. Start thinking from your mid-30s, what are the things that I really like? Do I like acupuncture? Do I like homeopathy? Do I like running into the sea screaming, as I do? But so there's a number
in a good way.
In a good way.
Not being chased by something.
No, not being chased. So it's like, what are the things that I actually like? What make me feel better? Walking on the coast path, doing all those different things, taking exercise, going to the gym,
having time for yourself,
having time, reading a book, whatever it is, what makes me feel, what is it I need to just make me feel like myself? So having that, going into that period of change with that knowledge about yourself, which is good. And then starting to have that realization, oh, something's changed. Maybe I'm less able to cope with these different things at the moment. Maybe I'm having different kind of symptoms. Maybe this is what's happening. So not to be at the whim of somebody who will say to you, oh, right, well, you're 47, you must be menopausal then. And you're going, well,
what
actually,
does that mean?
What does that mean? I don't know.
And
it may be that I just can't sleep at this particular time because my children have left home, I've lost my job, I'm starting a business, so there's stress going on. So it's looking at what is affecting your life, not just treating your age as whatever it is. It doesn't have to be menopause. It could just be something else. It could be stress. It could be that together with it.
No,
you know.
So the point of menopause is hormones are changing.
Yeah.
And the hormones are changing from a very strong form of estrogen, estradiol, into another form of estrogen, which is estrone. And it's nice and important to know that that process of change is not a loss. And it's the word, you lose your estrogen, you lose your sex drive, you lose all the collagen in your body, you lose bone mass, you lose, it's all about loss. Actually, it's a change from your body functioning in one way to your body functioning in another way. And it's a really positive change, because though your body's been doing lots of hormonal work that promotes growth, promotes endometrium, it promotes pregnancy if that's your choice, but it also promotes a lot of symptoms that people have, like cysts and endometriosis and all that, but that's another area that we will deal with. So there's a lot of changes, and those changes are really important changes into midlife. And these estrone and this form of estrogen that you get is very protective. It also drives you slightly less, so it gives you a lot more space. So this is kind of the connection between menopause and moving midlife, which is why it's not just, oh, I did that, I had my hair cut and now it's grown back. It's not that sort of change. God, I survived menopause, thank goodness for that. It's actually a celebratory time, which is very, very difficult if you've got lots of symptoms, which is why it's important to try to reduce the symptoms.
Like, we're recognizing those symptoms, and we're kind of going to deal with that kind of difference between coping symptoms, things that actually you notice them but you can still continue with your life, and things that actually really need correction. And I often kind of liken it to where people sometimes end up is, it's not like when your house is on fire, you're going to ring the fire brigade and say, can you come and check my smoke alarms? You just went, I want it to stop. So, you know, it's almost like, so planning ahead is kind of useful, but it's almost like kind of thinking of, I do need to deal with these symptoms because they're interfering in my life. I need my life back. People talk about that. I'd like my life back, you know, from somewhere. And what we're saying is, yes, it's important that you are able to deal with life. It's, you know, that you're not having excessive sweats, you know, that you're not having no sleep at all. And let's find out what could work. So, and the other half of what we're doing, I suppose, is the other piece of the puzzle is that connection between menopause and midlife. And it's, I was wondering whether it's useful to say, what do we think midlife is?
Exactly. I think that's a really good thing. I think menopause, I know we were talking about, but menopause is part of the midlife. So people often think of midlife as post-menopause, and it could be. So there's certain changes I think we hold at certain areas. So we have childhood, whatever that means, which it means a lot of things in different societies. We have puberty that we sort of go through. I think 20s has an aspect of learning, and a lot of people about 30, it seems to be the culmination of all the things they've done right or wrong, and they sort of feel, I'm entering adulthood. Sort of at 30.
Was that supposed to happen at 30?
Well, okay. I think it's sort of like, do you know what I mean? I mean, this is very rough and it's very tough, but a lot of people that I see about 28 to 32 say, oh, it suddenly makes sense, or they suddenly change their career, or they suddenly go back to college, or they. So I guess you've got that 30s thing, and then 40s seems to be about sort of balance, and that might mean change. And then I guess I look at late 40s as sort of midlife. Because it's a bit of a turning circle. So it's not to do with getting old, it's to do with knowing your mind, knowing what you do and don't put up with so much. So for me, midlife is not find the day I die and divide it in half. It's sort of a time of, it should be a time of peace of tranquility, of a creative energy, that you're not trying to get your pension in place, get everything in place. It's almost like you've reached the point and you've got to the top of the ridge, if you were walking along a big mountain path, and you've slugged up the hill and you've got to the ridge, and now you can walk the ridge, with a few ups and downs, but admire the view and admire that space.
And I think the thing where people kind of seem to equate menopause and midlife is it's because it can happen at that time. Yes. So it's kind of can coincidentally happen.
Yeah.
And what we're kind of saying is actually menopause is important for midlife because there is a transition. And actually it does get you from one hormonal state to another hormonal state, where you then don't have that same monthly wrestling with your hormones in that sense, that you then have a bit more space. And this is, I guess, where I got interested in this whole process, having gone through that stage myself, and realizing that actually I was much more creative and had much more energy. And I actually went back to things I was interested in puberty and all of those different areas, even in childhood, and kind of thought, well, maybe I could try that again. So yes, so in my 50s, actually starting putting on, exhibitions and art exhibitions, and just realizing that was because there I was frustrated, having done my O-level art, but actually then going back and doing something with it. So I kind of feel like, we're looking at menopause as that progression, containing, moving on from one stage of life to another stage of life, midlife, that kind of, what do I want to do with the next 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it is that I've got left, and how can I live my best life at that point? And so I guess, having been through that process, both of us, what we're saying is, here are some options, and here are some things to explore, and here are some things that we found useful. But we also may be doing is talking to other people that have gone through that process and have other information to share. So we're hoping that it's going to be an information source,
a real information source on people. And I think the process of why they're intermingled is because hormones take a huge amount of energy in our life, huge amount of energy. And the process, the monthly up and down, people always blame it that they're not coping well, but actually it's a huge energy that we're using. So the beauty of midlife is having all of that energy returned to us that we can use creatively.
So in that sense, you do get your life back.
In that sense, you do get your life back, but instead of getting a life back, that one, you've actually released a new one. You've released this so that you've got space to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really lovely synchronous combination of finding that time when we are very creative and using it very positively.
Yeah.
So as we go on, we want to sort of spend some time on both of those issues.
Yes.
So that, and if you've got any particular questions,
ask us anything.
Issues, ask us anything. And we're hoping to do a session later on, which is called Ask Us Anything, that we can actually go, are you worried about this? We've also run a couple of webinars in the past.
Yeah.
For people, so if you are in a position that you want to share this with work or whatever, we're quite happy to do that. And we also have a couple of videos on a course for women and a course for men, so they can learn a little bit more about it. But do check those out and see where we go. And
do put things in the comments and things that you'd be interested in, topics you'd be hearing about.
Absolutely.
So as we go forward, we hope we'll just enjoy the journey together.